My name is Julie, and I'm from Denmark. Today is May 11th, 2020. So the issue of state versus federal power is really significant right now because of course, this whole situation with the COVID-19 and kind of who really has the responsibility for handling this. Is it the states or is it the federal government? And also around the world, because the US is a superpower, so of course a lot of other countries around the world look at the American way of doing this, and like trying to see what works and what doesn't work, and if there's something they should use in their country. The US has addressed this public health response by closing down schools and workplaces, making, rules, guidelines saying that people have to stay at home, be in home lockdown, of course, to prevent it from spreading, and also closing down all public events, again, to prevent it from spreading, of course. And to present both side of the argument, like whether the federal government or the state should be responsible. I would say that, so an argument for the state to be responsible is that they know what is going on in that specific state, they know the system, and if the federal government has to be aware of everything going on in every single state, it might be too much of their focus being moved away from other important areas, like coming up with ways to support, let's say, companies economically, for example. And also leaving it up to the state means that they might be able, within the states, they might be able to work together with other states and seeing if some of the states are similar, some things might work better in these states than in these states. And a reason for the federal government to be responsible for it is that they can implement these rules and make these guidelines for everyone to follow so that it's equal all around the US and all the states. That was the main argument I could come up with, because personally I don't think that you can leave it to one of them. I'll leave that to my personal response later. And to include 2 facts or statistics, I found an article on Johns Hopkins University and Medicine website that's concerns a statement that Trump has made about the economy, where he says that we need to open up the economy again in the US, in all states. And in what they discuss in this is that if we open up in all the states, some areas are gonna have huge outbreaks, and then that is gonna affect the economy too, and maybe even worse. So the argument here made in that article kind of supports the fact that the states should be in charge of the reopening, or like making the decision of when to open the economy again, because if in certain areas, if they open too early, it might end up, being even worse in the end than if they had waited in the first place. An argument for the federal government to be responsible is also an article I found on Johns Hopkins University and Medicine website that where they talk about the social safety net that the US government issues that can help many families, many people who might not be able to work from home, or even, they've lost their job due to the coronavirus. And for them, it means a lot that the government has made this social safety net so that they can actually still be able to, pay for a house or support their family. My personal opinion about this is that you can't leave the responsibility up to the state alone or the government alone. You need to work together in some way, because the government can make the rules, laws, or guidelines that each state kind of have to follow. But within that state, they can, if they can use these guidelines or the laws, let's say the guidelines, to look at the situation within the state and then find the best possible way to deal with the situation, because it might be different from state to state what is necessary. And one way I've been looking at it is saying, like, when we're talking about the gun laws too, that in some states it's people have guns because they need to be able to protect themselves from wild animals, or they use the guns for hunting. Whereas, let's say I live in Nevada, and here people do that. You know, they some people have guns because they feel the need to protect themselves from wild animals, and they use them for hunting. Whereas if you live in New York City, that you don't have the same need for that. And I think it's the same with this case, that in some states where you don't really have a lot of big cities, you might have different needs and different ways that would work within that state concerning this whole COVID situation. Whereas in a state like California, where we have big cities like LA, San Francisco, and where you have a lot of people living together in crowded space, and it's easy to spread the disease, they might need to deal with it differently. They might need to use the resources differently, and that's why I think it's really important that that the individual states can have a big responsibility too. But my overall opinion is that the states and the government has to work together. The government can talk to other countries, see what's working or whatever, and then based on that make the guidelines, or tell the states, give the advice or something like that, where in this case I would say that teamwork is the best way of dealing with it.